The director of both Ori games has accused Xbox of slopping out mediocre content like a factory, and that this practice doomed their potentially viable Game Pass program. Welcome to Inside Games Daily, the only gaming news show brave enough to agree Xbox simply needs to make the best games of all time, all the time.
Yeah, it's just so simple. Just make the next Grand Theft Auto. Gosh, why can't you just do that? Yeah, well, okay. We're being reductionist for the sake of comedy, hindsight's 2020 and all that. And making games is really, really hard, but if anyone should know that, it's Moon Studios CEO Thomas Mahler, who was venting some frustrations, right, Brian?
Yes, much like Martin Luther, he hammered his lists of grievances to Game Pass's wooden door on X last week, detailing his appraisal of why the subscription service floundered and what the resulting fallout will now be.
Thomas Mahler served as the creative director on 2015's Ori and the Blind Forest and its 2020 sequel Ori and the Will of the Wisps. Both games were on Game Pass. Tellingly, the studio's 2024 title No Rest for the Wicked is not.
Yeah, I'm gonna guess the subsidy payments started shriveling up around that time. Mahler starts by observing that Game Pass's offerings were just simply not high enough in quality to convince people to sign up or stick around. He writes, quote, "The software catalog was just nowhere good enough to make people happily pay the subscription every month." Adding that, quote, "If your new content doesn't even remotely match the quality of the old content, you've got a problem."
Yeah, Mahler has even stronger words for Game Pass's quality as the post goes on, which we'll get to right after this.
Into the AM is all about premium apparel that elevates self-expression and provides unparalleled comfort for wherever your passions take you. All their apparel is made for real life, every single day use. It's definitely a high quality, but it's also a fair price as well. I'm actually a big fan of their basic tee. I love the athletic fit. The stretch in the t-shirt is like definitely something I'm always looking for. And the neckline doesn't have a tag, which is huge. I hate tags. I like the fact that some of their graphic tees are also kind of understated. And of course, there are aliens on them. So I do love aliens, and I'm going to wear a t-shirt with aliens on them always. Also, some of their nature designs are really, really inspired as well. And who doesn't love a good skeleton tee? You're going to need I promise you, they've got so many skeleton tees at Into the AM, so you're going to find one that fits you. I'm sure of it. And Into the AM has tank tops. You know I love tank tops. They're incredibly comfortable. Exactly what I want. So make sure to click our link in the description for Into the AM if you want to buy some basic tees or graphic tees. You'll get an amazing deal if you use that link, and you'll be supporting Inside Games. That's right. Me, Lawrence, Shooklin, and Brian Garr. We love Into the AM.
Thank you for your support Into the AM. Now let's go back to Thomas Mahler's Game Pass grievances. He gets to the real solution. Xbox just needed to make world popular games over and over and over. Are they stupid?
I mean, obviously, we're kidding. That's easier said than done. Mahler writes, quote, "You need those games your studios are producing to become smash hits, cultural events that everyone wants to play. But what was the big Xbox game in recent years that was just delightfully good? That game doesn't exist."
Yeah, Oblivion Remastered kind of had its week. Everybody was glowing about that for a while, but yeah, got a point. Mahler then connects the same dots that we, or at least I, have done on this show several times. That game was probably supposed to be Starfield.
Mahler wrote, "Almost every single first-party studio in recent years has been floundering. You'd want Bethesda to create a Skyrim in space that ought to be better than Skyrim was, because that was an old game, but we got Starfield instead." So, ouch.
Jeez, Mahler then validates us even more, writing that Xbox may have been a little too hands-off with developers that had no incentive to bust their ass to make truly exceptional games. That's something we have been saying for literal years.
Yeah, this is a great line here. Quote, "Game Pass is in some ways a little like communism." I like that. Thank you very much for the drop quote there. Mahler continues, "And just like with communism, if you don't give people a strong incentive to roll up their sleeves and go the extra mile, they won't. And if you then don't get the quality you need, it all comes crashing down because players will not pay up unless you basically force them to by making content that's so good that they feel like they miss out if they don't check it out."
Yeah, he then voiced his lack of faith in Xbox's current management to find those great games and motivated developers. To succeed, he writes that Xbox would, quote, "need to have good deals with devs so developers are actively incentivized to produce massive hits, not just slop out mediocre content like a factory, like some dirty commie factory that just makes slop for slop eaters. He's basically saying they need to make more system sellers, which I get, but that's really fucking easy to say and hard to do.
Yeah, that's right. So for context, this beautifully honest social media event is in response to longtime games producer George Broussard, who criticized the business logic behind South of Midnight's rumored $100 million production budget.
If true, that is a lot of money to spend on South of Midnight. Yeah. This is before Mahler's response. Broussard also accused Xbox management of being too uninvolved and too generous with their studios, writing, quote, "They gave teams too much leeway or rope or budget. They didn't properly enforce scope," end quote. And then goes on to lament, much like Mahler, that many studios that were actively doing their jobs honestly will now be punished because of the lack of oversight, the lack of scope enforcement, the lack of responsibility in investing, and so on and so on. So it's tough here. And yeah, we lampooned it a little bit. I get and agree with him about maybe Xbox game studios, the owned ones, not really pulling their weight. But I do think it's a little disingenuous to accuse Game Pass of not having great games, because I think it very much has, and I think it justifies its value many times over. Expedition 33 was on there, so was Pal World. Those are the sort of like cultural moments that Mahler's talking about. But I do think Mahler's specifically referring to Xbox game studios. And yes, there it feels like some studios have been soaking up tech money and enjoying catered lunches and free coffee and stuff like that, as opposed to diligently and honestly making games.
It also feels like he's kind of arguing for maybe like what Nintendo does with its internal studios, where it's it's a little bit, at least from the outside looking in, it feels like it's more tightly controlled by Nintendo, and it's sort of a more finely tuned machine to just sort of crank out exclusive after exclusive. I don't know if you can do that. I don't know if it's that is easily replicated in America, and it's sort of weird to be arguing that you should kind of treat your employees worse, but like I do get what he's saying, but it also feels like he's going down a slippery slope here.
Well, we talked about this a couple of days ago when we reported on more Game Pass stuff, which is like Phil Spencer goes to all these different studios and is like, guys, don't worry, make whatever you want to make, you got all the money in the world, all the time in the world, and Game Pass is going to make you successful. And so then they make South of Midnight on a $100 million budget. And it probably took them a long time, and it cost them a lot of money. And by the way, this is what I would assume developers want. They want a lot of money, and they want a lot of time, and they want a lot of creative freedom to make their video game. So that's great. But when the rubber meets the road and then we get down to a spot where the economy is not very good, well, then these people are going to be the first to go. And a lot of people made this point in our comments a few days ago. This is what happens when Xbox owns everyone, right? When they own all these studios, then somebody's going to have to get cut, whether or not it's South of Midnight or Ninja Theory or those sorts of studios, to make up for the Forza Horizon 6s and 5s and things like that. That's just what happens when they own everybody, and that's generally why we don't want one company to own everyone.
Yeah, it's a very bitter pill to swallow. Some of the studios I really like have been pretty diligent about producing games under this format. Double Fine, Obsidian has been crazy productive, even though they're in some hot water with a class action lawsuit right now. Id Software, Machine Games. I feel like it's not. Life isn't fair, but it's extra not fair that these studios that have, I did not observe any change in their games production or even their production ethic once they got acquired. Whereas some other studios, once they did get acquired, it did slow down and change a bit. So I don't know. It's tragic. If anything should happen to those studios, it would be just horribly unfair, especially since they've always done their jobs right. And yeah, Bruce, to what you were saying of Phil just breezing through when times are good, telling everybody to just chill out and make art at whatever pace it takes. And we understand that creativity takes a while. So just spend 2 years prototyping nothing. It's fine. As long as we get to that hit eventually. If that worked, it would have been fine, right? Like if they did produce a hit game because Phil gave them all of the creative freedom they needed to frolic in fields and experiment and, I don't know, smoke weed in the parking lot at 2 p.m. as part of the creative process. I'm assuming things now, but like if it had worked. But so it's like, it's weird in retrospect to like apply very rigid business thinking to a creative field, but that's the core contradiction of what we're dealing with in games. They're a product and then they're also a creative output. And you need the creativity, you need the humanity and the spontaneity to create a cultural moment that drives the business. And turning that into a predictable model is very hard to do, especially when you're competing with everybody, floundering in the dark for a new game idea, some way to make something new and exciting. But 5 years from now, because that's how long it's going to take to make. And yeah, I'm really glad that you brought this up, Brian, that like this implication that you need to be a little more firm with your employees to run a proper business. Yeah, it's, I mean, we're 4 or 5 years on from, I don't want to be too dismissive about this. I'm sure people still care about crunch, but it's not necessarily the rallying cry that it was in 2020 or 2021. And I do wonder, you know, it was a meme for a minute, I want shorter games with worse graphics made by devs who are paid more to do less. Did they all buy South of Midnight? I wonder, because that's what a game that takes longer to make from devs that are paid a little more looks like. And yeah, when it's competing on the open market, it's hard to stay above the waterline, but then you get back to this very uncomfortable topic of, you crack the whip on your devs to make them make a quality game? Do you apply the pressure to make diamonds? I think in an ideal world, people are passionate about a project and they're willing to put in the extra mile to make something great because they believe in it. But then that again gets really tricky when it starts to become a business and you start to try to run a studio to invoke that state in people or keep them there so that you can extract a lot of free work out of them. So yes, I think the idea is the perfect solution would be create an arrangement that incentivizes developers to work, but also compensates them properly if they put out something successful. But that's the tug of war that this whole business is in. And then we're back to life and life being unfair. So it sucks. I wish we didn't have to live through the downtimes to get back to everyone celebrating and prototyping and taking 7 years to make Starfield or whatever. So maybe we'll get our way back there eventually.
I think, you know, there is no such thing as a line that only goes up. There's it ebbs and flows. That's the way life works. And unfortunately, we're sort of in that downturn. And that doesn't mean that we need to crunch our employees. That doesn't mean that. I mean, we could figure out ways around that, I think. Meanwhile, we are making more inside games right now with actually better graphics in the form of Brian Gar. He would be 32-bit to 64-bit, right up way up there. So thank you very much for watching these episodes on YouTube, subscribing to the YouTube channel and telling your friends about it. And also, we do have a Patreon that you can support, and that will allow us to make even more content. A few people actually throw us a couple of bucks there over on the Patreon. Caleb Clark, Just a Day, John Sennett, Subliminal Opti, and Greg Wolf. Thank you very much for upgrading us from 8 gigs of RAM to 16 gigs of Brian Gar.
Gigs of Brian. Rhythm guitar player in an Irish quartet.